Shalom, welcome home to Jerusalem. I'd like to welcome the members of the International Council of Jewish Parliamentarians, all of you folks, and Lord Janner, thank you for the introduction. Amanda Weiss, the director of the Bible Lands Museum, thank you for hosting this forum. Amanda has a habit of inviting dear guests to this wonderful museum. Hopefully you enjoyed the museum and Jerusalem in general. With your permission, I'll start a few words about myself and then focus on Jerusalem. I'm a Jerusalemite practically all my life. I spent 6 years in the paratroopers. I was shot in Lebanon in 1980 at a raid, and then was a company commander in the first Lebanese war and then in the reserves. I spent 15 years in high tech, doing business in the global marketplace. Thank God, I've done for my home, and my wife and I started doing philanthropy about 13 years ago. Through philanthropy, I got exposed to the challenges of the city of Jerusalem. And I found that we're talking about the biggest, largest city in the country, however, the poorest city in the country, with strong negative migration of the medium and high social economic groups that in turn feed poverty in the city of Jerusalem. And yet we talk about a city with huge potential, one of the strongest brands in the world, and we are not considered the most stupid people in the world, yet our capital, the most important asset of the Jewish people, has not and was not exploiting its full potential. And probably as an entrepreneur from the business community, I realized that we have to turn the city around. We have to exploit the potential. I retired over 8 years ago from all my business activities, ever since I work for a shekel a year, focusing on exploiting the potential of the city of Jerusalem. What I've done is worked with Professor Michael Porter from Harvard Business School in thinking through how to create some economic changes in the city of Jerusalem, and created a few models of how to exploit the potential of our city. And with your permission, I'd like to start with articulating where we're headed. Discussing our future, the first step is understanding our past. And I want to remind us all that when the people of Israel, the Jewish people, came from Egypt, came to Israel, to the land of Israel, the country was divided to tribes, except Jerusalem. Jerusalem, for over 1,000 years, was managed under the sovereignty of King David and the kings. However, was never divided into tribes. It was the fundamental foundation of modern democracy, if you would like, where people were different but the same. And Jerusalem, that power of not belonging to any tribe, worked for over 1,000 years. It worked great. Both Jews and non-Jews alike used to come and worship and pray, and had to come to Jerusalem at least once in their lifetime. That was the role of the city, the temple. And indeed, when you think about how that worked, and unfortunately it stopped working 2,000 years ago, it is a key to the future of the city of Jerusalem, understanding the role we played. So we set out a goal and a vision to make Jerusalem a destination for pilgrims throughout the world, as it did in the past, create an experience coming to Jerusalem second to nothing, through culture, through exploiting the great atmosphere and the holiness of our city, and look at culture and tourism as a business cluster, if you'd like. And I've learned how other cities in the world, major cities in the world, created themselves more attractive. Paris, London, Rome, New York have over 40, sometimes 50 million tourists a year. Yet Jerusalem, with the brand that we have, probably the highest demand in the world. Over 3.5 billion people of faith throughout the world would like to come and visit Jerusalem at least once in their lifetime. It's a huge opportunity. And yet, just a few years ago, we had 2 and a change million tourists a year. I set an aggressive goal of getting to 10 million tourists a year. Last year, we did 3.5 million tourists a year. We've scaled 24% in our hotel occupancy just last year alone. And we've created some sub-brands. The first marathon was very successful this year. The Light Festival, and a few other festivals in the city of Jerusalem that take advantage of the physical location of the city of Jerusalem. The new opera that was here just a few months ago. And together we've created dynamics in the city of Jerusalem that create a strong demand, a good atmosphere. And through that atmosphere and strong demand, we've created Jerusalem to be very bullish for business. It has become more attractive for tourists. Therefore, the growth in tourism created Jerusalem more attractive for young businesses. And through some changes I've introduced to the municipality and the Jerusalem Development Authority, we're now creating Jerusalem much more attractive for the business community. And through that, we have economic growth, the first phases of economic growth, that then feeds and enables more and more people, young people, to stay in the city and turn the negative migration around. It takes time, it's not within a year, but we see first signs for growth on the business side and in culture and in education that we're invested heavily, and creating Jerusalem to be more attractive. There's no doubt in my mind, now serving 2.5 years as mayor, that we can continue feeding and fueling the changes in the city of Jerusalem. We also have lots of catch-up to do in planning and then in fulfilling and executing our plans. I'll give you an example. Jerusalem is currently about 800,000 people strong, and we anticipate that the city will grow to be 1 million people strong within 20 to 25 years. The natural growth of the different sectors, the Jewish, the Muslim and the Christian sectors, will grow naturally. Therefore, we have to plan adding 50,000 new apartments in a methodological way to the city. Side by side, by scaling the more hotel industry, the more hotel rooms, we have 11,000 hotel rooms. We need to scale another 20,000 to reach the number we want to achieve. We have to add, our current plan is about 20 million square feet of office space to the city. We're going to grow or rise 13 35-story high-rise buildings in the entrance of the city, and we're going to add more business places. So when we look at the master plan of the city, like any other city that we all belong to, at your hometowns and your home countries, we have to create a plan and address those needs. Now, those needs are addressed by our master plan that talks about scaling or expanding current neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods, Arab neighborhoods, improving quality of life for all residents. The master plan that we talks about is an honest and fair plan that takes into consideration the needs of all the different sectors. We've been challenged lately, sometimes by the world, that talks about a freeze in the city of Jerusalem. So I spoke to some of the administrations that requested something like this. And I said, we're now scaling and building 350 classrooms for the Arab residents in East Jerusalem. What do we exactly have to freeze? Do we freeze the Arab classrooms that we're building for catching up with schools? Or do we freeze Muslim buildings or Christian buildings? Or does somebody mean that we must freeze by race? Ask somebody if he's Jewish, freeze his home, and if he's a Muslim, enable that to happen? It's absurd and ridiculous. We're committed to help all residents of the city of Jerusalem build honestly and fairly. And if I'm not mistaken, to recommend freezing by race or by religion, it's illegal in Israel. If I'm not mistaken, it's anti-constitutional under any law. And when we in the municipality give somebody a permit, we're not allowed to ask him his religion. We're only allowed to ask him if he's building legally or not. We're continuing the path of building the city of Jerusalem for all residents because it's part of the strategy and the vision and the role Jerusalem played in the past and the role it is playing into the future. It is imperative for us to maintain freedom of religion. Unlike the 2,000 years before the city was reunited 44 years ago, today freedom of religion is as best as it ever was. The Muslims manage the Muslim sites, the Christians manage the Christian holy sites, and the Jews manage the Jewish sites. It was not like that before. Jerusalem went through over 13 conquerors. And the last of them were the British, the Jordanians, the Turks. None of them ever kept and maintained freedom of the religion the way we do now. Not one. As important, you should know that the residents of the city of Jerusalem, the vast majority of the Muslim community, the vast majority of the Christian and the Jewish community, would like to see Jerusalem as a united city. Sometimes the world is forgetting to ask the residents of the city what they think. You can see that in every poll, including late polls that were done by an independent American polling company. There's lots of work to do. And as somebody coming from the private sector, one of the challenges we have is introduce strategic long-term planning in the municipality. And we're now going neighborhood by neighborhood in areas where there's big differences between reality and the old zoning code, and rezoning neighborhoods in a very liberal way to decrease tension in places that we have gaps. It's a strategic thought process that deals pragmatically with the situation we have in the city of Jerusalem, side by side to improving our economy. Eventually, we all know that when you improve an economy of a region, of a city, people have more to lose, they become more moderate. They become more considerate. And turns out that in Jerusalem, the vast majority of the population wants to improve the quality of life, wants to get a better job or a job. And the vision I shared with you, creating more and better economics, is shared throughout the city. Just last week we had the Light Festival in the Old City. The police says that we had about 300,000 people come to Jerusalem in 7 days from all over the country, practically all over the world, going around the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, the Jewish quarter, around the Old City. No violence was reported. Because when it rains on everybody. Everybody's happy about that. And that is the Jerusalem that the Jerusalemites would like to see. And I know that this is the Jerusalem that the world would like to see. And we're now very, very open for business. We would like to see how people come and enjoy our city, go back home as ambassadors of peace, better understand the internals of the city. You know, we have 31 council members in Jerusalem. 30 are in the coalition. 30 out of 31. It's true we don't have Arabs in as council members, although they're allowed to vote. And maybe in the future we will. But we really look at a wide angle of how to make Jerusalem work for the benefit of all its residents. The word Yerushalayim in Hebrew is Yerushalem. It comes from the word whole. Shalem is whole. And the reason that Jerusalem is called Yerushalayim, because it was holy and whole at the time. And it is very, very important that people understand the model of the city. God forbid a discussion, any theoretical discussion about a division of the city will never fly. Will never fly. When people understand the vision and where we're headed, people must understand that there's not one good example in the world, not one, of a city that was ever split and worked. Especially not Jerusalem with its history. That in the name and in the way it worked and works today, God forbid any division is focusing on the differences versus focusing the way we should on the common denominator, which is the shared values and the shared vision of the city of Jerusalem. Lately, we've been getting a lot of support by the government. I have to admit that the government, Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, and the whole government not only has been supporting spiritually the vision of the city of Jerusalem and defending us, even in the United States, where I believe it was imperative and very important, and I thank the Prime Minister for defending the city of Jerusalem when he was in his last trip in North America, but also boosting through economic tax incentives our ability to scale culture tourism, health, life sciences, and outsourcing of professional services, which are all areas that we're now pushing to excel our economy. And it's a good opportunity to invite the business world and the philanthropic world to share and align interest with Jerusalem so that we can continue in changing and turning it around. I am very proud of the changes that we're making in the city. And I want to remind you all of us, you are all shareholders of the city of Jerusalem. And our goal and role is to align interest, to boost the changes in the city, and to bring it to the next generation in a much better shape that we received it. I know that you're going to go back home, and personally, I'd love to see you folks back here in bigger numbers and send the message that Jerusalem is open for business. We'd love to have more and more people come here, invest here, spend time here. And every time that somebody comes here and spends time, the hotel occupancy scales and grows, and you're actually investing in the city of Jerusalem. So thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting Israel and the Jewish people and our city, Jerusalem. And I'd love to see you next year in Yerushalayim. Kol Tov.